Professionally, he is a film and video producer. Having produced countless films, he grew his small business, Adventure Sight and Sound, into a thriving company, winning over 60 international awards along the way. Ron Duquette recently downsized that business so he could spend more time on his community work. You may be more familiar with him as one of Mississauga's top citizens. He is best known as a creator and organizer of the Women of Courage Luncheon Speaker Series. With past speakers such as Margaret Trudeau, Kathy Jones, Mayor Hazel McCallion, and Aaron Brockovich, the event has been a great success. He also helps the fundraising efforts of many organizations in the city, including Community Living Mississauga and Peel's Children's Aid, and 3 years ago he created the Mississauga Arts Hall of Fame. In 1999, Ron Duquette was Mississauga's Citizen of the Year. It wasn't the first time he has been bestowed such an honor. Ron Duquette was also Mississauga's Outstanding Young Citizen in 1978 and one of 5 Outstanding Young Canadians in the same year. Being honored in his youth was a big achievement as his family life was not always stable. He was born in the Gaspé region, a few kilometers away from Mayor McCallion, but his parents divorced when he was still very young. He spent time being shuffled around, foster homes, and eventually moved in with his father and stepmother. His history as a child from an abusive home has been the motivation for his involvement with the Intern Place and Speaker Series. He now lives with his wife in Mississauga and has 2 children from a previous marriage. After the break, I'll talk one-on-one with Ron Duquette. Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Bina Pandya, and joining me, I have a gentleman who's not only a successful businessman, but he's given back to the community in so many different ways, and he's Ron Duquette. Ron, welcome to One-on-One.
Thank you, Bina.
Ron, you know, you're a familiar face here at Rogers and within the community. Are you from here? Where did you grow up?
Well, actually, I was born in the Gaspé region of Quebec, just up the road from Hazel McCallion, and we talk about that every once in a while when we get together. I moved from that region of Canada at a very young age. Actually, my parents divorced when I was very young, so my brother and I lived in foster homes for a number of years in the Ottawa region, and then my father remarried, and we ended up in the Toronto area. And that's how I became involved in not only in Toronto, but eventually in Mississauga.
How did you end up from Toronto then into Mississauga?
Well, at the time, I was working for a very large advertising agency in Toronto, and I received a call from someone I knew politically. I was quite active in politics, that Bruce McLaughlin, who was a very large developer at the time, this is in the early 70s, right, was looking for a director of corporate communications and was interested in talking to me. So I came to Mississauga. I had never been here. Isn't that interesting? Living in Toronto.
Yes.
I had driven by, of course, many times on my way to Niagara Falls or to the States. But this was the first time I had actually come here, and came and drove up Highway 10 and came to what is now the city center area. And there were 2 buildings sitting in this cow pasture.
Just 2 buildings?
2 buildings. And I remember saying to myself, my goodness, someone has made a horrible mistake. But of course I met Bruce. We talked at great length. He told me about his vision, and I just had to be a part of it. So I left Toronto and came and worked for him, and that was the start.
Well, I'm sure the city is glad to have you here. In 1978, you were Mississauga's Outstanding Young Citizen. Mm-hmm. All right. The same year, you were also one of 5 Outstanding Young Canadians by the JCs. You mentioned you grew up in foster homes.
Yes.
You know, I'm sure you have a story to tell there. What sort of drove you, or what, you know, made you go on the right path to become an Outstanding Young Citizen?
Well, that's really hard to answer. I grew up in a very poor family. I was the oldest of 13 eventually.
13 kids?
13 children. We grew up in the Regent Park area of downtown Toronto, which is notorious for being a very rough area. And at a very young age, I developed entrepreneurial skills. I, of course, became very street smart at a young age. You had to down there. It just developed, something that developed. It wasn't something I learned from my parents necessarily, because they were too busy bringing up children. So I
can imagine with 13.
pretty well on my own. But I was a breadwinner when I was 10 and 11 years old. I was contributing to the family income. I had lots of part-time jobs. I had, at the time, the largest Toronto Telegram paper route in the entire city. And I never delivered a newspaper. I hired a bunch of young kids in the neighborhood to deliver all my newspapers, and I just did the collecting on the weekends. So I would deliver groceries. I would shine shoes. I worked in a metal factory, when I could, for a few hours here and there. And I was just always trying to find ways to make money. And as I say, it was just inbred. I was living on my own when I was 16 years old. I'd left school, and my family had moved away. And so I learned at a very young age, I guess, what it takes to do what you have to do in life and survive and make it.
But your value system, obviously, where did you learn this value system, this hard work system, and to be a good human being and a good person? Because you wouldn't have achieved everything you have without that.
I think probably I learned that from my stepmother. Here was a woman who, when she married my father, already had a ready-made family, and then, of course, started having her own children. And she was an amazing person, and she taught me a lot of the values I think that I have today, and that I impart on my own children and have during their young years as well. So I'd have to say it was probably her. And she's still alive and doing very, very well, living in Victoria, Canada, 85 years old, and I just love her to pieces.
Well, I'm sure, Mississauga is very grateful to have you, and we have Madam Mayor Hazel McCallion, and it's nice to know that you both sort of came from the same area, so two great people in the city from the same area. Stay with us. Coming up next, we're going to ask Ron what makes a good businessman. We're back with more with Ron Duquette. Ron, you grew up in Toronto, but you transported yourself here over to Mississauga. You're a successful businessman. You're a video and film producer. That's a pretty impressive title. Is your work all glamour as a producer? Oh,
absolutely not. I mean, anyone in the television or feature film production business or the corporate businesses, which is what I do a lot of, will attest to the fact that there's no glamour behind the scenes at all. But it's an interesting business. It's a fun business. You get to meet a lot of very interesting people. And in my case, I'm attempting through the work that I do to create and solve the communications problems that my clients are faced with every day in the business world.
What do you think is like a key sort of to a growing successful business? What are some of the qualities you need to have your business grow?
Well, obviously hard work. I think most people would agree that to start a business and to make it successful, you've got to work very, very hard, especially in the early years, and in fact, which was the case in mine. Obviously, you have to understand your customers and work very closely with them and making sure that you keep them happy and provide them with the things that they want. And I think, of course, the other thing is to surround yourself with good people, which throughout my business years, I've been very fortunate. I've had great people working with me, both as employees and as freelancers who I bring in when I need them. And when you put that kind of a team together, you're able to be very creative and just solve the problems that you're trying to.
As you grow, any business that grows, how can you assure quality, though?
That's, I guess, difficult, especially in the film business, because you're dealing with incredible technological changes all the time, new equipment coming on stream, new ways of doing things, and I think that's what makes my business very, very interesting. But you just have to stay on top of the technology, on top of the ways and means that things are being done, you know, working with associations and constantly learning new things. It's a learning process all the time.
Now, you are a successful businessman, but you've also chosen to get involved in the community in so many different ways. A lot of people may not know you're also a former Mississauga Citizen of the Year, which is also a very big honor. Do you think your business skills have helped you in all the activities, all the different associations that you're involved with?
Very much so, because, you know, when you sit down with a group of volunteers to raise funds or to raise profile of an organization, you're doing the same things in the business world. You know, I'm sitting down with my team to develop the creative strategies that my clients are looking for. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really the same, and I find that I learn when I'm sitting around the table with other volunteers as much as I do in the business world.
What would you say the difference is in working with volunteers as opposed to staff in a business?
Well, probably not as much stress would be one thing. You know, the pressure's not as great as it perhaps is in the business world. But at the same time, you're still trying to achieve certain goals. You're trying to do creative things. And but I would say probably a little less pressure it makes it much more enjoyable.
Would you say in the experiences you've had with volunteers, there is as much commitment as opposed to when you hire somebody in whatever cause you're working for?
Yes and no. I think in the main there are a group of volunteers that I know in this city that I've worked with for many, many years that seem to me to be as dedicated to the cause as they are in running their businesses. I think it comes over from the business. If you're that dedicated in your business, you're going to be as dedicated in terms of the volunteer work that you do. And many of the people that I work with, and I could name many names, right, are of that ilk. You know, they really do focus in on what it is needs to be done.
Coming up next, we're going to ask Ron about his involvement with Intern Place. You're watching One on One with Ron Duquette. Ron, you chose to get involved with Intern Place. I'm not sure if you've looked in the mirror lately, but you're not a woman. You are a man. Could you quickly tell us a little bit about Intern Place and why you chose to get involved and you're so passionate about it?
It's interesting because I get that thrown at me all the time. I grew up in a home when I was a child where there was a lot of abuse, and I experienced it through my childhood. So it probably led to my getting involved, but really the person that I can thank for that is Ron Lennox, who is the publisher of the Mississauga News. And Ron and I became good friends when I first came to Mississauga. And about 5 years ago, he was chairing the Capital Campaign Cabinet, who were raising funds for the new shelter that we built in the south of Mississauga. Mm-hmm. And he called me and asked if I would be willing to come in and help out, and of course I said yes. But it was interesting because in all of the years that I've lived here and been involved in the community, I knew nothing about Intern Place. I knew very little, so the profile of that organization was very, very low. And I'm proud to say that hopefully with some of the work I've done and all of the other committee members, you know, Intern Place is now very well known in this community. People like Susan Woods, who worked for the shelter at that time when I came on board, and all of the different people on the various committees and the board, which I'm now on. You know, it's amazing how the profile has elevated, and people in this city know about Intern Place.
Well, I think a huge reason why it has elevated, and we all know about it, is the Women of Courage series, which you spearheaded, created. Tell us about it.
Well, at the time that Ron brought me in, we were looking for a kind of a signature fundraising event. And I guess I had one of those brain waves one morning shaving. I don't know. They don't come very often.
The light bulb came on.
That's right. The light bulb came on. But I just thought, I'd always been very impressed with the Unique Lives series that runs in Toronto and various other parts of North America. So I thought, yeah, why couldn't we do that here in Mississauga? So I kind of jumped on board. I put a proposal together, presented it to my committee. They liked the idea. We presented it to the board, and they liked the idea, and they said, okay, run with it. And that's what I did. Put my group of great volunteers together and started trying to find sponsors. Mary Kay Cosmetics came on board very early in the game, and we were off and running, and it's been a great success.
Well, I know you have very high-profile speakers that you get every year, and it's just blossoming and it's growing. As a man, when you listen to the stories that these women have to say, what do you get out of it?
Oh, you know, I get as much as the audience does. I can't tell you the number of times I've shed a tear during those luncheons listening to the incredible stories. But you know, the Women of Courage Luncheon series is not named after the speakers that we bring in. A lot of people think that's the case. It's named after the women who come to the shelter and have to use our facilities, and that's why I named the series Women of Courage, because it's for them.
And where do you hope to take this series?
Well, I would, you know, in 4 years we've done extremely well. At the end of this season, we had handed over in total a little over $500,000 to Interim Place, which we've managed to raise. And I just want to see it get bigger and bigger. I have some dreams and plans of perhaps taking it across Canada and into a few other markets where we can help shelters in those markets as well. And these are the dreams that I have.
What can we hope to see for next year?
Well, we have, as those who attend this series regularly, Gloria Steinem was on board this year and unfortunately got ill the night before. So she's going to return, and she promises me that she's not going to get ill this time. Right. She will make it. But we have our second speaker that we've lined up so far, and we've got others we're working on, should be a very interesting story. And her name is Lynn Brewer, and she was the famous whistleblower in the Enron case in the United States. So I think she'll be a very attractive speaker, and certainly the business community will want to hear her story as well.
Well, we'll look forward to the next series. Stay with us. Coming up next, we're going to ask Ron about his new modeling career. We're back with more with Ron Duquette. Ron, you recently had a career change, I hear. You ventured into the modeling world, quite a difference from producer to model. Tell us how this came about and what you're doing in the modeling world.
Well, I'm not sure whether this will come back to haunt me or not in future years. But one of my Women of Courage committee members, actually, Diane Morgan is her name, was involved last year in the development of a calendar called the West End Girls, which is a fabulous fundraiser for the Princess Margaret Hospital, their cervical cancer unit. And I'm a great sucker for a good cause, so the group that developed this program decided that they were going to do a boys calendar, and it's called West End Boys. She prodded me and pushed me and asked so many times if I'd get involved, and I wasn't really interested because one has to take off one's clothes to be in this calendar.
So you were totally in the buff?
Totally in the buff. Anyway, I thought about it one day, and I decided to talk to my family about it, and so I called my kids and I talked to my wife, and they all thought it was a wonderful cause and a wonderful idea. So here I am. I haven't seen the photographs yet. I suspect that the photographer, who is a Port Credit photographer, did a very good job, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I think, again, it was a fun project. It's very tastefully done. It's a beautiful, creative piece of work. And as I say, the cause is terrific, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
So is this going to be a career move switch for you? Are you aiming higher?
I think my modeling days are probably over. I'm going to stick to the things that I do best, and that's producing film.
Well, you never know. If you get a good agent, who knows what can happen.
That's right.
When you are in this city, you must have seen so many changes from when you originally came here.
Oh, you know, being part of the growth of this great city has just been fantastic. I love to tell people about my interview when I came to speak with Bruce McLaughlin and driving up Highway 10, coming to Burnhamthorpe Road, and on the east side, southeast side of that area was a vast area, all bushes and trees. It was called the Valleys, Mississauga Valleys. And as I was entering, I saw all of these cars parked along the boulevard, and guys were getting out with shotguns.
Here?
In Mississauga, and I had no idea what was going on. Well, they were grouse hunting, and I guess back in those days you could do that down in the valleys. Well, the transformation, of course, from those days, when I came for that interview, there were 2 buildings on the current city center site, and it was all farmland. In fact, I had to shoo the cows away to park my car to go in for my interview. And I was going through some files the other day and pulled out a photograph of that area just after we opened Square One, which was in 1973. And the growth is absolutely amazing, and in such a short period of time. I mean, our city has grown really, really fast, and I really think it's grown well in most degrees.
What would you say is the best thing about the city?
Well, you know, I think all of the things that Hazel talks about, you know, we're debt-free, we're well-run. I mean, the council and the mayor and the staff at our city really do a very good job, I believe. And, you know, and we're the pride of Canada, and I think, you know, a large part of that is our mayor. And why not? I mean, she's been at the helm for over 25 years, and who knows how long, you know, she'll carry the job on. But, you know, I think it's been a well-built community. We have lots to offer, great business opportunities here. We're well located. I mean, anyone who's running a business would want to be located in Mississauga because of where we are. So I'm just proud to be a citizen here, and I love the city, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like to get involved in the way I do.
Well, when you go out for an evening out, where do you like to go and what do you like to do?
Oh golly, we have lots of different restaurants. My taste in food is quite varied, so needless to say, there's lots to offer. And I don't go to Toronto. I mean, you know, I go to restaurants in the Mississauga area, and certainly there's lots of them, and there's lots to do in Mississauga. You know, if you look at what we have at the Living Arts Center and all the festivals we have, I mean, it's really a hot spot for things going on. Now, that's not to say that we don't go to a Blue Jay baseball game or to a concert at the ACC every once in a while, but I think a lot of what we do is right here.
Well, I'd like to thank you for being my guest here on One on One, and we wish you continued success in whatever you choose to do.
Thank you so much.
That wraps up another episode of One on One. I hope to see you next time.